Hello, welcome to my summative presentation. I will be talking about my critical takeaways regarding law, foundation principles, and the history of special education, regarding the categories under IDEA and what stands out to me, the new terms and concepts that I've learned, how to have an inclusive classroom, any other information I've learned, and then a conclusion overall. Special education law is going to be the first section we're going to talk about. Education for All Handicapped Children Act. It was the first special education law directed for students with mental and physical disabilities. The law stated that public schools must provide children with special education needs, but also with the same opportunities as other students have for education. The Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, also known as IDEA, ensures that students with special needs receive free public education in the least restrictive environment necessary to meet those students' needs. So basically, it states that students with special needs receive free education in a safe area for them that works for them. The No Child Left Behind has schools be accountable for the performance of students academically, whether they have disabilities or not. The Act creates the requirement that schools test students academically, and it provides an incentive for schools to demonstrate the progress of students both with special needs and not with special needs. Individualized education programs are also known as IEPs, coming from the IDEA, which was mentioned previously. They maintain that parents and teachers of students with special education must create an IEP, which is a map and planned out source for a plan that fits specifically to the student's exact needs with their goals and their plans and their previous sections of understanding in their education. It sets an instruction and placement to play a role as well in this. Students with disabilities and post-secondary school. This is part of the Rehabilitation Act and comes from the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990. This applies to all schools where schools get free education in college, universities, elementary, middle, and high school. The laws for secondary schools are different compared to other schooling where school isn't free, but there are adjustments academically and payment for housing provided for students with disabilities. The Brown versus Board case was fought for segregation in schools, and this helped students with special needs parents come forward about segregation for their students as well. The Board of Education versus Rowley, the Supreme Court made the first decision in special education case with this, where the decision involved analysis into the evolution and involvement of special education law. Early special education programs were created to help students that were at risk in urban slums receive training and moral training for learning. Section 504 comes from the Rehabilitation Act, and it, as a civil rights law, prohibits discrimination on the basis of disabling conditions, and this relates to programs and activities and benefits from federal assistance. These are both pictures revolving the Section 504 plan and the meetings involving it. The foundation principles of special education are Child Find Zero project, which districts are required to seek and identify all students eligible for disability living, which are identified with parent permission to receive based on their special needs. Non-discriminatory evaluation, which before students are eligible for special education, they must be evaluated by the school district. The evaluation has guidelines of being tested based on their grade, their age, their level, and the expected of disability they may have, being tested on disabilities that are possible in their own language and meeting the specific criteria of the district, being evaluated based on all the decisions made, which are by teams, not by individuals. IEP, which was previously mentioned before, is a plan for students, which the individualized education plan based on their specific needs, so what they're learning, what they want to learn, what their goals are, etc. Free appropriate public education, also known as FAPE, is where students get free education, free appropriate public education. From an article provided, Teacher's Guide to Special Education, it stated that FAPE is the heart of special education because it's free education for students with special needs. Least restrictive environment. This is both a special education term and legal principle. It determines where a student with a disability is to receive services. Related services may be required for students. This basically is services that are required for a child with a disability to benefit from within their education. This includes the components of transportation, speech pathology, audiology, physical therapy, social work, etc. Parent participation is basically where parents give their permission and involvement into the process of special needs for their student, and they are able to look at the file of their student and be involved in the planning for their student as well. Confidentiality is kind of self-explanatory, where it is very important to keep the student's information just to those who need to know. Next, I will be discussing, after this is the IEP form. I will be discussing the timeline history of special education. These are listed before, but this is the order of them. The Civil Rights Act of 1866, Plessy versus Ferguson, the Supreme Court ordered that it was legal to segregate individuals and have separate places. Brown versus Board, which was mentioned before as well. Mills versus Board of Education, a case where the court established due process procedures for students to have equal rights, and etc. on from there. Categories under IDEA. The IDEA requires public schools to provide special education and related services for eligible students. This includes autism, blindness, deafness, emotional disturbance, hearing impairment, intellectual disability, multiple disabilities, orthopedic impairment, deaf blindness, specific learning disability, speech or language impairment, traumatic brain injury, and visual impairment. Each of these vary on what they are and what they relate to, but each qualify for special education and help based on them. Autism is spectrum disorder where there's a broad range of conditions characterized by challenges with social skills, repetitive behavior, speech, and nonverbal communication. Blindness is lack of eyesight, deafness is lack of hearing. Emotional disturbance are conditions where one exhibits one or more characteristics over periods of time that cause learning effects and educational performance. Hearing impairment refers to hearing loss but not complete deafness. Intellectual disability are kids with this have below average intellectual ability. They may have poor communication, self-care, and social skill. Multiple disabilities is where a student prohibits and shows more than one disability. Orthopedic impairment, this is when kids lack function of ability in their own bodies. Deaf blindness is where a kid has severe hearing and vision loss. They need both parts met. They can't just be in a group for blind or just a group for deaf students. They need to be in one that's classified for both so they can get the full needs met. Specific learning disabilities, one or more basic psychological process disorders a student may have. Speech or language impairment is a communication disorder such as stuttering that affects language, voice impairs, and can affect a child's performance. Traumatic brain injury is a brain injury caused by an accident or some kind of physical force. And visual impairment is decreased ability to see a degree that's non-fixable problems. Example, can't just use glasses for help. New terms and concepts that I have learned. There were quite a few that I've learned, but overall, ones that really stood out to me are the MTSS and RTI, IEP, Section 504, IDEA, Americans with Disabilities Act, Child Find Zero Project, Non-Discriminatory Evaluation, and FAPE. The MTSS and RTI has not been covered so far. This is the multi-tiered systems of support to benefit students and teachers with instruction and learning. MTSS is an educational process that provides research-based intervention and instruction. It is based off students' individual academic, social, and behavioral needs. RTI is a framework schools use to be helpful to students who struggle on 3 different levels of intervention: low risk, high risk, and some risk. IEP we've already gone over, which is an individualized program. I did not know this before, but I have learned a lot about this now over the course of this class. Section 504 is a section within the Rehabilitation Act where discrimination is prohibited. IDEA was a modification of the public law which helps students with disabilities receive free education in school to meet their needs. Child Find /Zero Project is where parental / caregiver consent. It gives students with special needs and disabilities the ability to receive education and help based off their needs. Non-discriminatory evaluation: before students are eligible, they must be evaluated using the guidelines. And FAPE students who are eligible for special education and related services are entitled to the appropriate public education that they are allowed to receive. These pictures represent the MTSS and RTI process. The top one and the MTSS one in the bottom right corner both show MTSS aspects, and the other two with the triangles in the middle of the bottom and the top right are the tiers of the RTI process. Inclusive classroom plans. Classroom management refers to the wide variety of skills and techniques teachers can use in the classroom to ensure smooth classroom plans and a smooth running of the classroom, and a set of plans that can help with less disruptiveness from students and interruption. Inclusive is including or covering all services, facilities, or items normally required or expected. In a classroom, you want to meet the needs of your students while having a smooth running classroom so that everything works good for you and your students, learning and teaching wise. Some classroom management tips that I have found helpful are greeting students, establish and maintain relationships, use cues and reminders, optimize classroom seating, give praise specific to behavior but other aspects also, set clear expectations, supervise actively, apply rules consistently, maintain patterns for student comfortability. Strategies that I've noticed I can use are: there are a variety of instructional formats: group instruction, small group, flexible grouping, individual, etc. Ensuring access to academic curricular content, providing students with new learning opportunities. Applying universal design for learning, methods varying, but ways such as modeling, images, objectives, graphic organizers, etc. Overall, there are many different strategies and forms of teaching that I can use, but overall, I just want to really connect with my students and build relationships with them and their parents to figure out what their needs are and find out what's best for them while using communication within the classroom to help with the positivity and the aspect of the environment. I also think that it's important to create comfortable virtual classrooms, especially with all the COVID-related things, which basically you can just connect with your students the same way. You just have to do it over virtual options. Parent involvement is one of the most important things in the classroom, where involving the parents and getting their feedback can help make sure that you are giving the best teaching that you can for their student. The interviews that we had throughout this class actually were very beneficial in the classroom aspect of this, where I was able to discuss what is necessary in the classroom and what the thought process for teachers that work in the classroom currently think and what they think are important to have in the classroom. I learned quite a few things from that. Basically, just communication is very much key in the aspect of teaching and working with students. My overall summary: I have learned so much throughout this course, and I've enjoyed this course so much. Through the articles, infographics, discussion boards, and videos that we have watched throughout this course, I've learned so many things about the different concepts, principles, aspects, ideas, and laws relating to special education. I've really opened my eyes to the world of special education, and I hope to look into it into the future more, because I really want to learn what there is in it, and because there's so much and there's such a wide variety of things you can learn. Overall, I think this class was very beneficial, and I cannot wait to use this information in my future learning and my future planning and teaching in the education field. These are my sites, but there were also sites provided by the teacher throughout the course, but these are the ones I used specifically for my responses. Thank you very much, and I hope that you really enjoyed.